Harkin.
Thank you, Ken Curla. I want to ask the Minister if the proposed eco scheme in the new CAP will be subject to internal convergence, and will it be a case of equal access for all farmers, equal opportunities for all farmers to access the scheme? And Minister, will farmers get paid for what they do, as distinct from the current greening payment, which is linked to historical entitlements from over 20 years ago?
Minister to reply.
Thanks, Deputy Harkin, for your question. So the exact shape of the various provisions under the next CAP are still under negotiation, and until all those are complete, there isn't final certainty with regard to the exact level of convergence that will be applied or the proportion of the direct payment ceiling allocated to eco schemes either, Deputy Harkin. The general approach agreed by Council last November would see a minimum of 20% of the direct payment ceiling for Ireland dedicated to eco schemes, while the Parliament are arguing for a higher allocation, up as high as 30%. At this point, the exact nature of how that scheme will work isn't clear, and whether payments from it would be on a per hectare basis additional to the basic income support for stability, or on the basis of cost and corridor income foregone. In the proposal, there is a prescribed order in which the direct payment ceiling is administered, and those steps are that, firstly, the allocation for eco schemes is deducted from the ceiling. Step 2 then is that the allocation for young farmers scheme is deducted from the ceiling. Thirdly, any other allocations or for other interventions are deducted from it, and then the remainder then forms the BIS ceiling. And finally, step 5 is the payment entitlement values then are assigned from that. And finally then, after values are assigned and the average value is determined, convergence can be applied to the entitlement values from that point forward. So the eco schemes are independent of that payment entitlement value. As you know, Deputy Harkin, the triloguing between the Commission, the Council and the Parliament, there's a super trilogue for 3 days next year. I know it's a process you're particularly familiar with, having been served as an MEP before. That will then set the European plan, which we will have to work through and set our own national plan coming out of that, and form our own domestic eco schemes that are consistent with the wider European plan that will be agreed.
Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you, Minister. I do understand that negotiations are still ongoing, and we have the super trialogues coming up. And I am aware of the respective positions of the Council, Parliament and the Commission. But I suppose this morning my question is to you and the policy that this government is pursuing. I mean, what is Ireland's position in the Council on the eco scheme? Do you support a flat rate payment not connected in any way to historical entitlements? And secondly, Minister, do you see the eco scheme perhaps starting out at maybe 15 or 20% in the first year, increasing perhaps to 25 or even 30% over a number of years? Or not? So I suppose my question is the position, your position, and the position of this government on those two issues.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
Well, my position at the Council of Ministers, Deputy, has been to maintain a 20% minimum threshold in terms of the eco schemes. The Parliament is pushing for 30%, but I do believe that it's really important that we try and ensure we maintain the basic payment scheme payments that farmers get. It's really important in terms of supporting them to produce top quality, healthy and safe food, and also to do that in a way that is consistent with good environmental practice. Within the new CAP now, there will be 20% minimum going to the eco schemes. I will be trying to frame those in a way that ensures that while we do have eco schemes and farmers do have to make a contribution in terms of complying with the eco schemes, that they do get that they do retain the value of those payments previously. And then working within Pillar 2, we look at putting in place programmes then that reward farmers for greater environmental ambition and delivering in terms of biodiversity and climate change initiatives as well, ensuring that it delivers new income streams for them.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you.
You mentioned 20% minimum. What's your range? Also, Minister, your department issued figures on the impact of 85% convergence on Pillar 1 payments recently. You started out with 100% of the payments, in other words, 70% for the basic payment and 30% for the greening. However, the figures used to illustrate the impact of 85% convergence only included 70% of the basic payment, and you left out the 30% greening. So, Minister, those figures were completely misleading. I'm not saying anybody set out to mislead, but that was the outcome. You have to compare like with like. Your department showed that under 85% convergence, everybody would lose or just barely maintain their payments. But that's mathematically impossible, and your department knows that. So my question is, will your department compare like with like and give all farmers impartial and accurate figures?
Thank you. Minister.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Harkin. That particular piece of research was to establish what the value of the entitlement would be. And that was what the figures that were set out were showing. Obviously, the value of the entitlement is going to be X, the eco-scheme payment, which will be extracted from the entitlement value in the first place. So that's what that particular piece of research was showing. I absolutely agree. It all has to be looked at in the round. And there certainly will be absolutely full and accurate detail and data from the department in relation to this, full disclosure and full transparency. I take the point there that you're making, but I think I would point out that it was about calculating what the entitlement value would be, and that is X what will happen with the eco scheme, and the eco scheme then will be applied to be applied flat, based in terms of compliance with the draft plan from European level, and farmers will apply to that separately.
Thank you,
but it does have to be looked at in the round, and ultimately what counts for farmers, Deputy Harkin, is what it means for their income, and that's the crucial thing here.
Thank you. Moving on now, this is the end of priority questions, and the next question is the name of Deputy Matt Carthy.
Thank you, Laskin Corla. Minister Hackett said that she was genuine in her ambition for forestry in Ireland. I want to put on the record that I accept that she is sincere in her ambition. But I have to say, Minister Hackett, you took office with a very bad position in relation to forestry, and that position has got a whole lot worse in the time that this government have been in place. I want to ask you, what are the changes that you're going to make to resolve what is now a crisis in Irish forestry?
Thank you. Minister to respond.
Thank you, Deputy. I don't think the situation has got worse. I agree it's not a lot better, but it certainly hasn't got worse. I think forestry and related issues, particularly in the resolution of licensing issues, are a major priority, as I said, for myself and my department, and we recognise the importance of forestry to farmers and forest owners, contractors, sawmills, nurseries, wood processors, and indeed to the wider rural economy as a whole. So it's a hugely valuable sector and hugely important. In order to fully deliver on the potential of the sector, we certainly do need a well-functioning licensing system. I am the first to acknowledge that we have fallen short in terms of turnaround time for licences, and this continues to be a problem. Steps have been taken to address the situation. We have invested hugely in resources with more ecologists, forestry inspectors and administrative staff, and there has seen some gains in output, but more work, I would agree, certainly needs to be done. We have set ourselves an ambitious target of 4,500 new licences for this year, which would be a 75% increase on last year, and we are determined to meet this target. In terms of felling, the volume of timber licensed this year is up 27% on the same period last year, so that is an improvement in that. In terms of product to sawmills, Quilcha, which is the main provider, is now fully licensed for 2021 for felling licences, albeit not all of their output is immediately available, but we are hoping to rectify that very soon. I established Project Woodland also to work with the stakeholders, the most important stakeholders, to examine all the aspects of forestry forestry, including a review of processes with a view to reducing the licensing backlog. This process is being implemented intensively, and the working groups are meeting very regularly, and I understand are due to come forward to me with recommendations in cases. I have also asked for a timeline in relation to the clearance of the backlog, and I do remain confident that the framework now in place under Project Woodland will address our current difficulties and will result in a licensing system which meets the needs of forest owners.
Thank you, Deputy